Namaste and good morning, everyone. Today is Tuesday, and on Tuesdays we read from Uddhava Gita. And today we are going to start a new chapter, chapter number 14. And the title of this chapter is Pure Devotional Service Surpasses Knowledge and Detachment. Pure devotional service. Seva, but without any desires. Because if we are doing seva, to get certain kind of a fruit, even a pat on the back, that is not a pure devotional service. Pure devotional service is doing the seva because we are supposed to do seva. That's our foremost duty. Okay. So let's do the prayers first. Om Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Devo Maheshwara, Guru Sakshat Parbrahma, Tasmai Shri Guruve Namah. Om Bhurбhuvah Swaha Tatsavitra Varenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyo Yo Nah Prachodayat Asto Ma Sadgamya Tamso Ma Jyotirgamya Mrityorma Amritam Gamya Om Senavaktu Senabhnaktu Saviryam Karvave Tejasvinavadhitamastu Ma Vidvishavahi Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. If you have the books, you can open it on page number 417. And we'll start with the summary of this chapter. This chapter describes the processes of Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, and Bhakti Yoga, according to the good and bad qualities that are found in various people. The Vedic literature propagates true religion, which are the orders of the Supreme Lord. The social structure that is put forward in the Vedic literature is known as Varna Ashram Dharma, which is within the realm of material duality. In other places, however, the Vedic literature advises one to rise above such a vision of duality. In this chapter, Uddhava wants this point to be cleared up as to why the Vedic literature appears to support two contradictory positions. Just to reconcile these two conflicting positions, Shri Krishna describes in this chapter the processes of Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, and Bhakti Yoga. And these are the three paths Lord Krishna mentioned in Bhagavad Gita also. Karma Yoga is the path that is recommended for persons who are filled with material desires. Jnana Yoga is the path that is recommended for those who want to retire from material activities for the purpose of understanding the absolute truth. Bhakti Yoga is recommended for those who have understood that everything in existence is owned and controlled by the Lord. So in other words, whatever the understanding is in the beginning, it's not a Karma Yoga towards the, when you truly understand the Karma Yoga, that is the definition. No, that's not what it is. But if somebody says, yeah, I have a lot of activities, a lot of desires, sure, be active and do something. But when you reach to the Karma Yoga level, desires finish by you. Okay? So as long as one desires to act fruitively, and as long as one's faith in the Supreme Lord has not matured, he should execute his prescribed duties as outlined in the Varnashram system. So Varnashram system, we got to understand that also, and we have talked about it many times before. Those who faithfully perform their duties as prescribed by the Varnashram system of social organization, carefully avoiding the sinful acts that are forbidden by the injunctions of the scriptures, will gradually rise to the transcendental platform of absolute knowledge. So that means there are some actions which are prohibited. We should not do those, no matter which path we are walking on. Generally, transcendentalists are first attracted to the impersonal conception of the absolute, but those who are very fortunate manifest devotion for the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So what he means over here is Nirakar and Sakar. Vishwa. The human form of life is the special opportunity awarded to the conditioned souls to awaken their dormant spiritual awareness, and as such a human birth is even desired by the demigods of heaven. Demigods of heaven means the Devatas. Devatas also want to come in a human form so that they can progress further. Although it is temporary, like all other forms of life, the human body can enable one to achieve life's ultimate goal. So in other words, ultimate goal can be achieved only through human form. Because those devatas, they are devatas because they did good deeds, thinking that I should get the fruit of those my good deeds. They became devata. Okay, that's why you remember that Yamraj, the Lord of Death, he was congratulating that 8-year-old young boy, Nachiketa. I am Yamraj, Lord of Death, because I desired this. But you, at a young age, you don't desire anything. I cannot attract you to anything in this world. You just want only God. So although it is temporary, like all other forms of life, the human body can enable one to achieve life's ultimate goal. For that reason, one who is intelligent will endeavor to gain a release from the vicious cycle of birth and death before death arrives at his doorstep. The human body is compared to a boat. The spiritual master is the captain of the ship, and the injunctions of the scriptures are the favorable breezes that can carry on to his destination. One who has attained the human form of life and yet does not endeavor to cross over the ocean of material existence must be considered the killer of his own self. The mind is very restless and senses always demand satisfaction. Therefore, by good intelligence, one should control his mind and senses by cultivation of the mode of goodness. So mode of goodness means sattvika. So we have to make all the effort in every area of our life, keep it sattvika. To help fix the mind in transcendence, one should meditate upon the creation of the universe from subtle to gross. Then one should meditate upon the dissolution of the universe from gross to subtle. One who has understood the futility of material existence can remain detached from the objects of the senses and bodily identification by carefully putting into practice the instructions of the spiritual master. Who is a spiritual master? The Guru. So whatever Guru says, we should do that. The three processes of eightfold mystic yoga, the cultivation of transcendental knowledge, and the devotional service of the Lord can all enable one to remain fixed on the spiritual platform. One should remain fixed in the determination to carry out one's prescribed duties. By carefully studying the scriptures, which detail exactly what is desirable and what is to be avoided in this world, one can elevate himself above the vicious modes of passion and ignorance. And over here, passion means the Rajsikta, ignorance, Tamsikta. So we got to stay away from these two modes of nature. By directly engaging in the devotional service of the Lord, all kinds of perfection are easily achieved. Anyone who is always engaged in the service of the Supreme Lord will gradually lose his taste for the inferior engagements of sense gratification. Ultimately, when one directly perceives the Supreme Lord, his false ego is vanquished. All doubts are destroyed, and all the results of fruitive activities are burned to ashes. Burned to ashes. So, good karma, not so good karma, all of them. Thus, the devotees of the Supreme Personality of Godhead never make a separate endeavor to perform austerities or other such similar processes. In pure devotional service, there's no question of piety or sin, because the unalloyed Bhagat has reached the transcendental platform. where the injunctions and prohibitions of the Vedas no longer apply. So that is a transcending the good or even the bad, because you are connected with God no matter what is happening. So let's start with verse number 1. And Uddhava is saying this. Vidhischa pratishedhasya cha nigmo hi shrajyase avekshate ravindaksha gunam doscha karam nam. Uddhava said, my dear lotus-eyed Lord, the Vedic literature, which constitutes your divine order in terms of positive and negative injunctions, focuses on the good and bad qualities of work. So in this chapter, Gyan, Karam and Bhakti are elaborately described, as well as those who are suitable to engage in these three processes. The activities of the living entities who are averse to the service of the Supreme Lord can be divided into two categories. Some good and bad qualities are always found in such activities. The prescriptions given by the Supreme Lord are termed vidhi or rules and are always considered good. The prohibitions declared by the Supreme Lord are termed nishedh. So these are the two terms I'm sure you're familiar with, the vidhi and nishedh. Or regulations, and to transgress them is always considered faulty. So the nishedh karam we should not do, or prohibited karam, or nishedh karam. Or there's another term for that, vikaram. You remember karam, vikaram, akaram. So again, Uddhav says, varnashram vikalpam cha prati lom anulom cha dravya desh vyakalan swargam narkam ev cha. The Vedic literature creates the divisions of Varna and Ashram and describes the good and bad qualities in relation to mixed marriages called Pratilom and Anulom according to time, ingredients, place, and age. The Vedas also reveal the existence of heaven and hell, which are certainly the products of piety and sin. It was previously stated that pointing out good and bad qualities of others is in itself a fault, and so one should give up such a dualistic mentality. So it's like a pointing out to others that you are bad. That is the devotees doesn't do. In the following 5 verses, Shri Uddhava expresses his desire to know more about this from the Lord. Uddhava said, my dear Lord, the Vedic literature contains your instructions and consists of recommendations and prohibitions. The performance of prescribed duties is always beneficial, and the performing of prohibited acts is always faulty. Good and bad qualities, piety and impiety, and heaven and hell are born of such recommendations and prohibitions. In the social system of Varna and Ashram, there are good qualities and faults that are judged in terms of the various kinds of marriage. If a man marries a girl of a superior Varna, then the union is termed Pratiloma. If a man marries a girl belonging to an inferior Varna, that union is termed Anuloma. In any case, the entire Vedic social system is based on distinguishing between piety and sin. And Shri Uddhava is encouraging the Lord to explain more elaborately his statement that one should transcend both piety and sin, pap and punya. Divisions of Varna, divisions of ashram, divisions according to the nature of one's birth, various objects and places, and the existence of heaven and hell are all the results of piety and sin. Okay? Because where we were born, the kind of a body we have, or even like a social order, or even our Vedas say, are we the eldest? or the youngest, or the middle, all of that is based upon our karma. Nothing goes against the karmas. It's a karam chakra. So that's why Uddhava is asking all this. He says, I read about it. Uddhava was a very learned person. He said, in the Vedas, all this is written. What should I do with that? How can I go above it? Let's look at what else he is saying. Gun dosh vida drishti antren vachastav nishreyasam katham nirnama nished vidhi lakshanam. Without differentiating between pious and sinful acts, how can one understand your instructions in the form of the Vedic literature, which orders one to act piously and forbids one to act sinfully? Without such authorized Vedic instructions, which ultimately award liberation, how could human beings achieve the perfection of life? These are the questions should come in our mind too. Because we want to know deeply, what is Lord Krishna saying? What is this life all about? All recommendations and prohibitions are presented in the Vedic literature as instructions of the Supreme Lord. Because what are those Ved mantras? They are not written by some human being. They are called apurusha. So that means they are not man-made. They came from the mouth of Brahma. And where did the Brahma got it? From Brahma. So how can we say that they are wrong? So all recommendations and prohibitions are presented in the Vedic literature as instructions of the Supreme Lord. In order to advance toward the perfection of life, one must discriminate between good qualities and faults. Anything prescribed by the Lord is a good quality, and anything prohibited by him is a fault. Therefore, it is impossible to achieve any auspiciousness in this life without making a distinction between good qualities and faults. Uddhava is pointing out that if a person has no interest in making a distinction between piety and sin, then it becomes impossible for him to properly understand the scriptures. Without the assistance of the scriptures, how can a human being hope to understand the absolute truth or to be liberated from material existence? Verse number 4. Itri devam manusyanam vedas chakshustaveshvara shreyastva anu labde arthe sadhye sadhanayor api. My dear Lord, Vedic literature in the form of your orders is the best evidence for understanding things beyond our experience, such as liberation, the attainment of the heavenly planets, and knowledge of the ultimate goal of life. So that means all the knowledge is coming from the Vedas. We got to study those. For this reason, it is imperative that the forefathers, demigods, and human beings consult the Vedic literature. Because that's the ocean of knowledge. What to do, what not to do, how to live this life. Vedic injunctions are not only beneficial for human beings, but also for the demigods and forefathers. The best way of seeing things in the right perspective is to see through the eyes of the Vedic literature. See, the word of the Vedas is the ultimate Brahman. That's why whenever there's a doubt, they say, go to the Vedas. Find out from there. Which consists of the instructions of the Supreme Lord. Vedic literature is the original source of all kinds of knowledge. One can learn from liberation, the heavenly planets, and the ultimate goal of life, as well as the process for achieving the goal of life, only from the Vedic literature. Human beings, demigods, and forefathers can see everything in the right perspective, learn about sadhya and the processes of sadhana by seeing through the eyes of scriptures, which are the Supreme Lord's orders. All living entities, be they forefathers, demigods, or human beings, are directed by the orders of the Supreme Lord. So, what is sadhya? See, sadhana we all understand. We do the sadhana for the sadhya, the goal. Okay? So, what is our goal? What is written in the Vedas? We should know. Verse number 5. Guna dosh bhidadrishti nigmat te nahi swata nigmenapavadascha bhidaya iti brahma. My dear Lord, Uddhava is still speaking. My dear Lord, the distinction between piety and sin comes from Vedic knowledge, which emanates from you and does not arise by itself. It is seen that the same Vedas discredit attempts to distinguish between piety and sin, then surely there will be chaos. A dilemma has apparently been created by the Vedic literature. The Vedas, which consist of the Lord's orders, advise one to discriminate between good and bad. At the same time, it sometimes forbids us to make such distinctions. Therefore, Uddhava is confused about what is right and what is wrong. And he prays to Krishna to remove his doubt. See, that's why Guru is called a remover of the doubts. So Uddhava has this doubt. What can I do? And he went to the right place to ask this question. Because the Vedic statements that one should discriminate between good and bad and other statements that one should give up such a vision of duality are seemingly contradictory. Shri Uddhava is here enacting the pastime of a bewildered person by asking the Lord to resolve this apparent contradiction. Let's see what Lord Krishna is saying in verse number 6. Yogas treyo maya proktaha nrinam shreyo vidhisya jnanam karam cha bhakti sacha na upayo anyos kutrachit. The Supreme Lord said, my dear Uddhava, because I desire ultimate welfare for human beings, I created 3 kinds of yoga or paths of advancement. Gyan Yoga, Karam Yoga, and Bhakti Yoga. Besides these 3, there is no other means of elevation. Although all the processes that are recommended in the scriptures lead one to Krishna consciousness, it should be understood that people accept varieties of paths due to their particular inclination and propensities. Underline this. We are not all same. Even though at the essence level, the Atma level, we are all same. But our minds and the intellects and the ego or even the bodies are different. Here, Lord Krishna describes the 3 paths of spiritual advancement just to show that the ultimate goal is one. The 3 methods for advancement have been described in the Karam Kand, Gyan Kand, and Upasana Kand sections of the Vedas. And you are all familiar with these sections of Vedas. Whatever path one may follow, success depends upon the mercy of the Lord. Mercy means the kripa, the grace. Indeed, no progress in any endeavor can be made without the sanction of the Lord. It should be noted that the other Vedic prescriptions, such as the performance of austerity and the giving of charity, are contained within these 3 general processes. By the word treya. So you remember in the verse, Yogash treyo mea proktaha. Treya means 3. The Lord emphasizes that the fruitive activities of the karmis and the mental speculation of the jnanis are inferior to the surrender of the pure devotees who are engaged in bhakti yoga. Because ultimately, whether we want to study something or we want to do the karma kand, goal of all of this is what? To create a loving devotion for Lord, and that is bhakti. We want to unite ourselves with God. That is a yoga. By doing the karma, when it becomes the karma yoga, when we reach to that level, we are united. Gyan also, we are studying the scriptures, but ultimately Gyan will take us towards that yoga also. Then it becomes Gyan yoga. And bhakti also, if we are doing a sakam bhakti, that is not a bhakti yoga. Bhakti yoga is only when we have all those qualities also, and we have dissolved ourselves completely at the feet of the Lord. Only then there's a union. Just going to the temple and just doing arti every day, that is not bhakti yoga. Remember that. The processes of karma, gyan, and bhakti have been described in the Vedic literature for the ultimate benefit of all human beings. Apart from engagement in these processes, there's no other way for a human being to achieve auspiciousness. What else Lord Krishna is saying? Nirvina nam gyan yogo nyasi nam ihi karmasu tesha nirvinan chita nam karma yogastu kami nam. Gyan yoga is recommended for those who have seen the futility of material existence and thus want to become detached from fruitive activities. Karma yoga is recommended for those who are fond of sense gratification, failing to understand the great distress that accompanies fruitive work. Here is a description of the various propensities that cause a person to accept a particular path of elevation. Those who have become thoroughly disgusted with the animal propensities of eating, sleeping, mating, and defending, and thus are not even interested in enjoying these things in heaven, take to the cultivation of transcendental knowledge. Those who are still very eager to enjoy a materialistic life, centered around friends and family, and who are attached to the flowery words of the Vedas that recommend promotion to the heavenly planets for superior sense gratification, are not fit to take to the arduous path of philosophical speculation. So that means they are not ready yet. They are still very attached. Materialistic men are advised to remain in family life and offer the fruits of their labor to the Supreme Lord. In this way, they can gradually attain perfection, which is dependent upon knowledge and detachment. Okay, so it all depends what our inclination is. Gyan Yoga has been prescribed for those who have become detached from worldly enjoyment. And Karma Yoga has been recommended for those who are attached to the fruits of their work, being driven by the spirit of enjoyment. Because Karma Yoga says, do it selflessly. Keep on cultivating those qualities in you. Okay? Do your duty, but do it selflessly. And ultimately, offer it to God also. Get rid of the selfishness. Slowly get rid of all the flaws in you. Verse number 8. Yadrichyaha mat kathadau jat shradhastu yapuman na nirvinoho nati saktaho bhakti yoge se siddhida. Somehow or other, if one develops faith in hearing and chanting my glories, by good fortune. Being neither very disgusted with nor attached to material life, he should try to achieve perfection by following the path of loving devotion to me. So no rag and no dvesh either. You don't need to run away from this life and control your senses. You are not attracted to any of these sensuous objects either. Listening to God's name, God's glories. The word yadrichyaha has been explained in the first canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam. One develops faith in discussion of the Supreme Lord by the association of advanced devotees. So when we are in the company of other Bhagavatas, we get a little color of that bhakti on us also. That's why they say Sangha Vanga. This is the main criteria for developing faith in the nectarian glories of the Lord. By continuously hearing discussions of the Lord's transcendental name, fame, qualities, and pastimes, a faithful person gradually advances on the path of devotional service to the Supreme Lord. Only a faithful person is qualified to engage in bhakti yoga. So that means if we have that kind of inclination, then we can rise up on this bhakti yoga path. This faith is the actual distinction between the devotees and the karmis or jnanis. The word puman, which is used here, is a singular and thus stresses that a devotee is very rarely found. So this level of a bhagat, very rare. How many Miras are there? How many Sudamas? How many Shabris? That's rare. A devotee is not overly attached to his material body, wife, and household, nor is he excessively detached. Those who are thoroughly indifferent to material life are eligible for cultivating jnana. And those who are thoroughly attached to the materialistic way of life are eligible for engages in karma. Those who are neither overly attached nor detached are eligible for executing bhakti. This is the difference between those who are suitable candidates for the three processes, karma, jnana, and bhakti. In the 11th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, this verse is spoken by Shri Shukadeva Goswami. He says, my dear king. And who is the king over there? If you remember Bhagavad Purana, when we studied it, Shukadeva is talking to Parikshit. He's the king. And who is Parikshit? Arjun's grandson. My dear king, in the material world, the conditioned souls are confronted by death at every step of life. Therefore, who among the conditioned souls would not render service to the lotus feet of Lord Mukund, who is worshipable even for the greatest of liberated souls? So that means we really don't know every step, which moment death is coming to us. Don't they say as sure as death? Other things may or may not happen, but death will definitely happen. Who has been born? Every conditioned soul who has received the association of a pure devotee of the Lord can become qualified to engage in the devotional service of the Supreme Lord. Those who are fond of cultivating materialistic knowledge generally are devoid of faith in the descriptions of the Supreme Lord's glories. So he's talking about the average jnanis. Jnani without the bhakti, without the devotion. Expert linguists who study various languages and dialects such as Brahmi, Kharushti, Sankhi are sometimes seen to be fully absorbed in materialistic life. and sometimes seen to exhibit symptoms of extreme detachment. Neither excessive attachment nor excessive detachment can give satisfaction to the soul. And so, when one's faith in these practices diminishes, he can develop faith in the narrations of the Supreme Lord's pastimes. Pastime means Leela. When Lord Krishna was here, what did he do? Having interest in it. Or any other avatar, or any other guru, their lifetimes. Those are called the pastimes. What did they do? How did they live in this material world? When such faith becomes firm, one can understand that devotional service alone is the ultimate goal of life. Because you start feeling the rust of the bhakti. Because that nectar is what we are looking for. See, just like if you buy oranges, sure, you look at how it looks like, the color, the shape, the size. You bring it home, not just to look at it. Ultimately, you want to taste the rus of that orange. So this rus of life is the bhakti. Some commentators distort the meaning of the verse and dare to say that devotional service is only meant for those who are incapable of practicing renunciation. They say that karam is recommended for those who are expert at performing activities aiming at material enjoyment, and gyan is recommended for those who have the strength to renounce such material enjoyment. Such false arguments of no value out there. In conditional life, one is sometimes absorbed in excessive material attachment and sometimes absorbed in trying to detach himself from material association. This is something like the movements of the planets, which sometimes move forward and sometimes move in a retrograde manner. In any case, such materialists and ascetics are unable to understand the transcendental nature of devotional service. The Supreme Lord and his eternal associates exist in a realm that is distinct from the auspicious and inauspicious situations of this material world. Only those who have fallen from engagement in the service of the absolute truth, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, become absorbed in such positive and negative mundane concentration and thus are indifferent to the path of genuine spiritual life. In this way, they cause their own ruination. Some such persons aspire to attain the heavenly planets where greater facilities for sense gratification are found, and some desire to enter the darkest region of nations by merging into the existence of Brahma. When the modes of passion and ignorance predominates, so that the mode of goodness appears lost, one rejects the shelter of the Lord's lotus feet, thinking himself to be the Lord of material nature. One becomes spontaneously attracted to the devotional service of the Lord simply by the causeless mercy of the Supreme Lord or his devotee. Persons who are bewildered by false ego and so are unable to place their faith in the words of the Supreme Lord and his devotees become covered by the lower modes of nature, thus take to a non-devotional path of either excessive attachment or extreme detachment. So they just go into the extremes. We don't need to run away where we are. Whatever our prarabdha is, wherever we are supposed to do our duties. And while doing the duties, we got to see that is my love increasing for God or not? While going through this life journey, we don't need to reject anything and we don't have to overly obsess about anything. Just live the life in moderation. We'll start next week class with verse number 9. Lord Krishna is still answering. If you think the answer is not clear yet, just wait. when we are done with few more verses next week. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vishishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Thank you very much.